Good evening, everybody. This is Jennifer Lazo over with the Emerging Technologies Caucus at the Crisis Technology Center, and we are about to start our very first micro talk to talk about rising technology issues and new developments that have happened in the last 10 years. So we have our very first speaker, Sarah Estes Cohen, who has a really interesting talk on the history of the last 10 years of technology and improvements going on in disaster response. So please come join us. And Sarah, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. I wanted to just give a little bit of background on social media because I know it's pretty easy to assume at this point that social media has been around like it is now for a while, but I think that it's really important to understand where we've come from. A lot of us have been working on this topic for a really long time, and only recently have we started to actually really gain any traction with the concept of using social media for public safety in any sort of official way. So I want to go over the history of the rise in social media popularity as well as the proliferation of mobile technology. So back in 2005, mobile was just beginning to become something that was more popular. The technology was just becoming a little bit more advanced. We had examples of social media just a little bit during 2005, a little bit beforehand as well. You had Facebook, but that was .edu, or it was required to have a .edu to join and to participate. And you had MySpace, and Friendster had existed before that, and obviously there were several other examples, but they weren't as popular. After Hurricane Katrina, there was an example of SMS donations. However, I think that the total amount of money that was raised after Katrina via SMS was only around $200,000 total. As a comparison to understand how things have changed, after Haiti, Red Cross was raising $200,000 an hour via text message. So a little bit of a change in only a couple of years. In 2009, H1N1, we started to really see the proliferation of social media for public health. There were various public health agencies that were leveraging social media for a variety of reasons to provide information out to their constituents as well as to the other public health agencies that were within their areas. We had various websites that had RSS and blogs. They were starting to send information out via multiple channels as well as via multiple languages. They started to develop standardized messaging that could be leveraged by their partners. And we also saw Google putting together analytics so that we saw Google flu trends. So they were looking at search terms and were able to predict the prevalence of the flu. And actually, compared to the epidemiological data, it was pretty close to accurate. And actually, I skipped over 2007 in this because we're talking more about mobile. So the percentages that you're seeing here are the penetration of mobile, or the percentage of online adults using social media, not necessarily the amount of social media that's being used. So in 2007, we had Virginia Tech, and that was one of the first examples that we saw the use of social media during a disaster by the public. In 2007, immediately following the shooting at Virginia Tech, which was the first shooting, not the most recent shooting, obviously, the Virginia Tech website crashed because they hadn't planned for anything more than 100,000 hits per hour. And after the Virginia Tech shooting, there was a massive influx of information, or people looking for information from the public, the people, the parents, the children, the media, various people. So the website crashed, and in the absence of information that was provided by an official source, people went to social media. And so it was really interesting to look at some of the social media content that was out there after Virginia Tech. A lot of people went to a website called fark.com, which was a blog at the time, and you could read this blog that lasts for 24 hours, and you can watch the entire event unfold on this blog. Sometimes true, sometimes not. People posting content that they found from text messaging, from instant messenger, from police radio. And that information served as most of the information that was provided or used by the media to update everyone. So we had a lot of different rumors that were going out. Like at one point, there were names that were released of the people who had died. People were talking about who they thought was the shooter. It wasn't always true. And then eventually, over time, it became accurate. And someone created a website called My Death Space. And so they were taking the MySpace pages and sort of turning them into an obituary. So again, a lot of that information happened outside of the realm of the official website of the university. And it was interesting too because at the time, the Clery Act, which is an act that requires universities to provide information to the students within a timely manner, Virginia Tech was hit pretty bad with the Clery Act, or not following the Clery Act, and for several years they were arguing that. And so that was sort of the first time that people were starting to question, when should an official agency or organization provide information, and should they be leveraging social media to send that information out? And the argument was that, at the time, they didn't necessarily know the full extent of the issue, and so they hadn't sent any information out because they thought that it was just, a focused incident that then became something bigger. In 2010 through 12, we had Haiti. That was one of the first times that we really started to see a pretty big or an expansive use of mapping after a disaster. There was a lot of mapping that was happening on the ground in Haiti, and actually I saw a lot of maps coming out from the ground from various organizations. And they were mapping the location of resources, the damage that had happened in Haiti. We also saw some of the information relayed via multiple channels from Haitian Creole into English, and there were rumors, about tweets or messages sent through the channels about people that were stuck in the rubble, and supposedly it got all the way up to federal levels, and resources were deployed to save them. I've never been able to actually prove that, but those were some of the examples. There were various groups that got together that started to provide translation for the Haitian Creole that was coming out of Haiti. Also in the Oklahoma tornadoes, we started to see the use of social media much more by the public and the community. So after the tornadoes, there was a lot of use of Facebook for volunteer organization as well as resources. It was interesting though, because after the tornadoes, that was right around when Facebook had just launched the profile page, or there was a difference between the personal page and the group page, but they hadn't really released what exactly the information was on how to use that page yet. So after the tornadoes, a lot of people didn't realize that if they used a personal page on Facebook, they would max out at 5,000 friends, and the Facebook page is shut down in the middle of the event. So that was kind of an issue. There were various examples of people who just created random Facebook pages that were then used to organize or self-organize within the community, and eventually some of them were able to hand those pages off to the official organizations, just such as Tumors for Tuscaloosa and various others. And then 2013-14, that's when we really started to see the proliferation of information via social media that was used for intelligence or situational awareness. We also started to see the use of social media back in the Japan earthquake, or not even social media, but more so just technology that's sort of enabled by social media or supported by social media. But the GPS location of the cars that were built in Japan, they were able to pull the location of those GPS signals and then map the locations of the signals and then find out which roads they were not on. And they were able to then assess those roads and called them damaged because there was no information coming out from those roads. And then just over time in the last few years, we've started to see the rise in popularity of the digital volunteer team or the virtual operational support team, where we're starting to really see public safety agencies tap into the power of the crowd as well as into volunteers to help satisfy some of the resource gaps that we see in government agencies. And so I already went over this, but you can see over the last 10 years, we really did start to use social media mostly just for communication and for networking. There was a lot of use of MySpace for music and stuff like that. It was mostly just general. After Katrina, those tools were there, but they were not used by public safety agencies, and so there was no real organization. The only way that you were able to leverage that resource was if you already had an existing network. So for example, after Katrina, I was able to use MySpace to find an apartment and to find a job, but unfortunately I didn't have a lot of friends who were on MySpace, and there was definitely no official information on MySpace either, so there was nowhere for me to go to get information. I remember I spent several hours on the internet looking for websites where people were reporting their location. but you had to first find that website and then search through pages and pages on that website in order to find the person that you were looking for. I had one friend that I didn't find for 5 years because she didn't join Facebook until 2009 or 2010. So as we continued through the next couple of years, we saw the use of social media more so for alerts and also general engagement. Again, with H1N1, starting to really engage the community to provide information with them, but also to provide them with the resources for them to provide information back to the organization as well as to each other. The gaming, there was some gaming that was used around flu preparedness as well to try and engage the community. And then with response and recovery after the earthquakes and the tsunami, the crisis mapping, the integration of the digital volunteers, as well as the volunteer management and the coordination of the volunteers. You know, you hear these stories about people who, after an event, called for a volunteer and 500 people showed up, you know, faster than recovery or nonprofit organizations could organize in a location. You'd have people that would just show up at a school to provide help after the tornadoes. And then in the last couple of years, really the push for situational awareness. And now what we're trying to work on is the use of social media as data to help to inform operational decision making. So what is the information that the public safety community needs to make the decisions that they need to make based on their mission objectives, and what kind of information from social media can you pull in order to support that? I think that's it. So I wanted to just open this up now for some questions if anybody has anything that they would like to add. This is sort of a brief overview of the last 10 years. Very generalized, main issues per some of the main or the biggest events, but obviously we've seen the progressive advancement of these technologies as well as the use of these technologies within the community, and then afterwards with public safety agencies. Hurricane Sandy was a really good example of sort of the biggest or the most widespread use of social media in an official capacity. We saw various government agencies really turning to social media for community engagement. There was a lot of use of social media by the public, and government agencies were able to sort of tap into some of the resources that were being used or available at the community level. Also, the private sector became more involved, what I like to call the alternative utilization of private sector resources. So for example, the third-party platforms like Airbnb, something that the community could turn to for as a resource, or a traditional resource that would be provided by the government, which is now available outside the circle of the government resources. And so Airbnb was somewhere that someone could go to get housing because Airbnb allowed their platform to be open for free after a disaster. So that starts to take the place of the more traditional housing vouchers that might be provided by Red Cross or by FEMA. There was also various other examples like SeeClickFix, which is a 311 type platform where people could report issues, or Walk Score, which was another one that allows people to map or grade how easy it is to walk around their neighborhood. And so people were going on there as well to report damages within various neighborhoods. And also we saw a lot of the mapping. People were going on and mapping the location and availability of gas. So again, a lot of resources that were being developed outside the scope of the official government agencies, and the social media technologies that had become popular and become possible were really enabling the community to participate in their own recovery. So any questions? Well, I mean, there are myriad tools out there for monitoring social media, and there's many ways to set up the social media, the keywords and the monitoring, the hashtags, and all, you know, there's a lot of semantic research going around, development of algorithms to be able to identify that kind of stuff. You know, it's assigning meaning to content that would not necessarily have the previous meaning. We did some research around inferred geolocation, so assigning location to content that did not have a geolocation assigned to it previously. But you know, the volume with which the community uses social media at the global level is so great that one agency does not really have the ability, no matter what they do, to stop the communication on social media. The only thing that they can do is try to establish relationships prior to an event so that people understand that that's the resource that they should go to, and that if they see something happening or they go back to the official information first to try and check it. But we can't control what's happening on social media any more than we could control what was happening on the streets in Ferguson. So there's not really an answer to that. I think that really is just more about how fast can we know that it's happening, and also how fast can we assign context to this information so that we better understand the implications of this information to the agency and its mission, and use it to your advantage. I can't hear you. Well, a lot of content that comes out of social media has a geolocation. Well, that was Toyota or Honda or whatever. So that car company had GPS tools in all of their cars, and so they were able to pull that data no matter what. But then it would be really great, but unfortunately, there's a lot of privacy policy around there that if it weren't for the privacy and security complications of a lot of the information that's provided on social media, we could probably do a lot more. But most of the government's hands are tied when it comes to aggregated information, especially. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you. I know. It's all right. All right, well, thank you very much.